Hello there, you're watching All 24 News, World News Program. I'm your host, Karim Zachary, and these are your headlines. Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune sent an invitation to Senegalese President Macky Sall to attend the Arab Summit in Algeria as a guest of honor. Also coming up, the territories occupied by Russian troops in Ukraine have begun referenda on Friday to join Russia. And coming up next in the news program, the US Treasury also imposed sanctions on the Iranian morality police, accusing it of including ill treatment and violence against women and violation of the rights of peaceful protesters. Hurricane Fiona hits eastern Canada on Saturday, with nearly a week after devastating parts of the Caribbean. And finally in our news, the career of the tennis superstar Roger Federer has come to an end yesterday after playing his last game at the Laver Cup in London. Hello again and welcome to the program. First in our news, President of the Republic Abdelmadjid Tebboune chairs a government assembly on Saturday at the nation's palace. Participants in the meeting discussed a number of themes related to the role of governors in local economic development and the new legal framework for promoting the investment sector, as well as the reform of local finance. Algerian Foreign Affairs Minister and National Community Abroad, Mr. Amtala was received on Friday by Senegalese President Macky Sall on the sidelines of the ordinary session of the United Nations General Assembly. Mr. Lamamra delivered an invitation from the Algerian President, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, to his Senegalese counterpart in his capacity as AU chairperson to attend the Arab Summit in Algeria as a guest of honor. For his part, President of the African Union Macky Sall expressed his gratitude and appreciation to the Algerian President for his invitation and accepted the invitation and confirmed his keenness to participate in the summit. And still on the sidelines of the 77th session of the UN General Assembly, the Algerian Foreign Affairs Minister, Mr. Amtala held talks with many other of his counterparts. The talks focused mainly on questions related to the clauses of the United Nations and Security Council meetings agenda, in addition to other issues. The Palestinian President, Mr. Mahmoud Abbas, claimed that the confidence in achieving peace based on justice and that the international law is waning in the implementation of solutions. According to Mahmoud Abbas, Zionists are still committing crimes and ignoring the resolutions of international organizations, and stressed that Palestine doesn't accept to remain the only party that abides by the agreement that both sides signed in 1993.
And the international community should hold them accountable. We ask the international community right now to hold them accountable for what they have done, for the massacres they have committed. And we will go to the International Criminal Court, yes. And to all the courts of the world. We want the implementation of a single resolution. And right now, Resolution 181, which you have adopted.
And in a landmark ruling, the African Court on Human and People's Rights denounced the Moroccan occupation of Western Sahara as a serious violation of the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination. The court ruled that both the UN and the AU recognize the situation of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic as one of occupation, and consider its territory as one of those territories whose decolonization process is not yet fully completed. Moving on now, the territories or the occupied territories by Russian troops in Ukraine have begun referenda on Friday to join Russia. Ukraine and the UN condemned the holding of the popular consultation in the territory of Donbas on its accession to Russia. Hossein Barkan reports.
History repeats itself. After Crimean referendum in 2014, the citizens of self-proclaimed Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republic cast their ballots on Friday in historic referendums on joining Russia. Voting in the provinces of Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson and Zaporizhia, representing about 15% of Ukrainian territory, is due to run from Friday to Tuesday.
I came first of all because we've waited for this for 8 years. We are Russians and this is our victory. That is why it has to end somehow. This is really our victory. I came here and it felt like a victory day.
Thousands of Russians attended pro-government rallies on the Russian cities of Moscow and St. Petersburg. Local authorities in Moscow reported 15,000 showed up to support the referendums.
I am and I hope all Russians remember that our children, our boys are not just boys, they are sons of Russian warriors, a drop of their immortality and a spark of their fire. We want to be with them today.
In his nightly address on Friday, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky condemned Russia's referendums, along with the mobilization Russia began this week, including in Crimea and other areas of Ukraine.
The world will react absolutely appropriately to the pseudo referendums. They will be unequivocally condemned, and to the criminal mobilization which the occupiers are trying to conduct now in Crimea and other parts of Ukraine, which they are temporarily in control of.
The White House also responded, affirming that the United States is prepared to impose additional economic costs on Russia in conjunction with the U.S. allies if Moscow moves forward with Ukraine annexation.
We are prepared to impose additional swift and severe economic costs on Russia along with our allies and partners in response to these actions if they move forward with annexation. We stand with our partners around the world in rejecting whatever fabricated outcomes Russia announces.
President Vladimir Putin has indicated that Russia plans to reclaim the territories once the voting formalities are over, and has threatened that Moscow is willing to defend its gains using all available means, including nuclear weapons.
Reservists arrived by bus at a military unit checkpoint in Vladivostok, Primorsky Krai region, after being called up for partial mobilization to fight in Ukraine. Reservists will follow a roadmap that starts by passing comprehensive health checks and then beginning combat training. In our other news, Finland is set to introduce new measures aimed at significantly restricting the right for Russians to enter the country. Speaking from New York, the Finnish Minister of Foreign Affairs, Pekka Haavisto, said that a draft of the decision in principle already exists and is currently undergoing technical and legal preparation, and that the process will take a few days. The two heads of diplomacies of China and the United States, Wang Yi and Antony Blinken, held a meeting in New York where the focus of the talks was Taiwan tension. Following that, a statement from the U.S. State Department spokesperson said Blinken stressed that preserving peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait is critical to regional and global security and prosperity. China's foreign ministry, meanwhile, said that the U.S. is sending a very wrong and dangerous signal on Taiwan, and that the more rampant the Taiwan independence activities are, the less likely a peaceful solution will be. To other news, the death toll from a migrant boat that sank off the Syrian coast after sailing from Lebanon earlier this week has risen to 86. The country's transport ministry has quoted survivors as saying the boat that left Lebanon's northern Mania region on Tuesday bound for Europe with between 120 and 150 people on board. Moving on now to a different topic. We apparently don't have the guest, Dr. Rami. Do we have Dr. Rami? Okay, so moving on now to a different topic that regards Iran file. While the internet throughout the country is witnessing turmoil and interruptions, Interior Minister Ahmed Vahidi said that it aims to control the protests that the country has been witnessing for a week. Washington announced measures to support the free flow of information to the Iranian people. Meanwhile, the U.S. Treasury also imposed sanctions on the Iranian morality police, accusing it of ill treatment, violence against women, and violation of the rights of peaceful protesters. The American position did not appeal to Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, who accused the West of double standards, pointing out that the United States is not free of police killings. British Finance Minister said on Friday that he doesn't comment on market movements after the fall in sterling. His comments came after the unleashed historic tax cuts and huge increases in borrowing in an economic agenda that floored financial markets, sending sterling and British government bonds into free fall.
I don't comment on market movements, but what is good for the economy?
Caused it.
What is good for the economy is creating an environment where people can come and invest in the UK, and that's exactly what we've done. I think it's a very good day for the UK because we've got a growth plan. We're very, very upbeat about what we can do as a country. We were facing low growth, and we want a high growth economy, and that's what this morning was all about.
Hurricane Fiona hits eastern Canada on Saturday with nearly a week after devastating parts of the Caribbean. The U.S. National Hurricane Center said the center of the storm, now called post-tropical cyclone Fiona, was crossing eastern Nova Scotia, bringing high winds and heavy rains. The Ugandan Ministry of Health said 11 people have died in the latest Ebola outbreak and at least 20 more have been brought to hospital as officials work to contain the disease. According to the ministry, around 85 confirmed cases have been registered to be affected by the virus. Still in Africa, the Malian army announced that it had killed 36 militants and arrested at least 65 others, while 4 of its soldiers were killed and 4 others were wounded in several military operations carried out across the country between the 9th and the 22nd of September. This operation was followed by another separate operation in which 20 militants were killed and significant quantities of weapons and ammunition were recovered. Italian parties held their final rallies on Friday ahead of a general election on Sunday that is expected to be won by the Giorgia Meloni-led right-wing bloc. Islam Sid reports.
Parties in Italy closed their final election campaigns as the country is preparing for a snap election on Sunday. The rallies were marked by strong presence of major parties, including the right-wing Brothers of Italy led by Giorgia Meloni, who is widely expected to become the first female prime minister, as polls show a major leap of her party from 4% in 2018 to around 25% in recent polls. The rightist coalition also involves Matteo Salvini's League Party and Silvio Berlusconi's Forza Italia.
We could have done like the others and came to the square and say something easy like vote for us.
Enrico Letta, the head of the center-left Democratic Party seen as Meloni's major rival. Letta served as premier in coalition including center-right forces after a 2013 election failed to get a clear majority, but he lost the premiership after less than 10 months.
Noi siamo qui esattamente per fare questo.
We are here exactly to do that, to face the problems and solve them. And we want to do that through a united policy, and above all, a European policy. Long live Europe. I want to say it and repeat it. Long live Europe. Enough with this anti-European narration. Long live Europe.
On the other hand, Giuseppe Conte, Five Stars movement leader, closed his electoral campaign in Rome on Friday. He could be the third political force after sweeping nearly 33% of the vote in the election for parliament and became the legislator's largest party.
On Sunday, 25th September, we are almost there. It is an important moment for our national community. We must choose. We are called to decide if we want to either increase the salaries of those who earn 2, 3 or 4 euros per hour, or to increase the salaries of those who already get 10,000 euros per month net.
Election alliances have a key role in how seats are allocated. According to the fragmented political landscape in Italy, no party has a great chance of getting enough seats to rule alone. The next government is unlikely to take office before late October, with the new parliament not meeting until October 30th.
To Mexico now, a large group of demonstrators attacked a military complex in the Mexican capital on Friday as they accused the army for the disappearance of 43 students that took place almost 8 years ago in southern Mexico. Riot emerged with protesters throwing firecrackers and knocking down fences. A group of soldiers used a water cannon to disperse the protesters and preventing them from entering the complex.
We want them to open the archives to the public, as we know in these files there are hidden bits of evidence. Up until today, we don't know where our children are. We want them to hand us over all the hidden evidence they have. Where our children are. Where did they take them? Or where do they have them?
Still with protesters now, we move to a climate change protest that was taking place around the globe. With Sofian Kentori in this report.
In support of students-led Friday for Future movement, hundreds of protesters and environmentalists took the streets of the Indonesian capital on Friday to call for action on climate change.
One day it could be my house that gets flooded. I'm living with a sense of crisis. So I think it is more important to deliver my concerns to the government, to take preventive measures rather than going to school. What is important to me right now is not a school test. For me, surviving is the real test.
Protests against climate change also took place in Europe, precisely Germany, where tens of thousands of people took the streets to demonstrate in various German cities on Friday. Protesters in Berlin demanded an end to this issue, which is using the fossil fuel and quick expansion of renewable energy.
It's insane to see the climate crisis as something limited and as a small crisis, but rather it's catalyst that will also cause other crises.
Skipping schools in South Korean capital was on the trend. Hundreds of students went out to attend a rally demanding more government action to address climate change.
As young people, we're gathering here to collaborate and work together as a collective group from various entities and regions to voice our aspirations regarding environmental issues, so we can find solutions to climate change.
During the first Fridays for Future strike of the month, environmental protesters and climate activists continue to spread awareness about climate change with the assistance of non-profit organizations.
And finally in our news, the career of the tennis superstar Roger Federer has come to an end yesterday after playing his last game at the Laver Cup in London. Roger Federer was one of the best tennismen in the history of the sports. Nabi Khazini.
It is the end of a legendary fairy tale crowned with a career full of all stories of success for one of the best athletes in the history of sports. Every speech of admiration was said, and every word of praise was written about the elegant tennis player Roger Federer. But as every beginning has an end, for all hands present during his forever lost game, it was time to take a long moment and applaud a star who will remain for sure as an eternal legend in tennis.
It was never supposed to be that way. It's just happy to play tennis and spend time with my friends, really. And it ended here, so it's been a perfect journey. I would do it all over again.
In 2003, Roger Federer won his first Grand Slam title in Wimbledon. That moment was the beginning for a series of other 20 Grand Slam titles for the gifted Swiss tennisman. with the last one to be in Australia in 2018. Those last titles were particularly special for Roger Federer, as they followed very hard moments for him after a series of injuries, forcing him to miss major events and to be dropped from the top 10 rankings.
I am 41 years old. I've played more than 1,500 matches over 24 years. Tennis has treated me more generously than I ever would have dreamt, and now I must recognize when it is time to end my competitive career.
The curtain for the brilliant career of Roger Federer is now down. However, tennis lovers will always remember his sublime techniques and golden hands that have engraved him in the history of tennis.
All right, here's a reminder of our top stories for today. Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune sent an invitation to Senegalese President Macky Sall to attend the Arab Summit in Algeria as a guest of honor. The territories occupied by Russian troops in Ukraine have begun referenda on Friday to join Russia. The U.S. Treasury also imposed sanctions on the Iranian morality police, accusing it of ill treatment, violence against women, and violation of the rights of peaceful protesters. And we interrupt this broadcast to broadcast to you live the activities of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmadjid Tebboune, who is going to be chairing Government Assembly on Saturday at the Nation's Palace. The participants in the meeting are intended to discuss a number of themes related to the role of governors in local economic development and the new legal framework for promoting investment sector, as well as the reform of local finances. The President of the Republic arrived at the Nation's Palace in the company of Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdurrahman, and in their way they are greeting a delegation from the government, including the Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, Mr. Saeed Shangriha, as well as other notable senators from the Nation's Palace. So as you were following, that was the President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, who's going to be chairing a government assembly along with at the Nation's Palace, and the participants are supposed to meet and discuss a number of themes related to the role of the governments in local economic development, as well as new legal framework for promoting investment in Algeria, as well as other important activities of endeavor. And the last headline. And then we're going to have a different headline. Hurricane Fiona hits eastern Canada on Saturday, with nearly a week after devastating parts of the Caribbean. And finally, as you followed in our news, the career of the tennis superstar Roger Federer has come to an end yesterday after playing his last game at the Laver Cup in London. And as you have seen, we have interrupted the live broadcast to get to you live the activities of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, who is chairing a government assembly on Saturday at the nation's palace, along with other participants from the government in the meeting to discuss a number of themes related to the role of governors in local development, economic development that is, and the new legal framework for promoting the investment sector, as well as the reform of local finance. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, our news bulletin comes to a close. For more news stories, don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and YouTube as well. Thank you for watching, and take care.